The decision by the Federal Inland Revenue Service, which recently directed landlords and property agents to charge 6% stamp duty on all tenancy and lease agreements, continue to generate reactions from concerned Nigerians. The landlord and property agents, according to the Director of Communications and Liaison Department of the FIRS, Abdullahi Ahmed, are to remit such collections to the service so that they do not run foul of the Stamp Duty Act. Many institutions are seeking reversal of the decision of the federal government. After examining the impact of the new stamp duty in the real estate sector, the Nigerian Institution of Estate Surveyors and Valuers has appealed to the federal government to reverse the charges. The institute said the timing for such increase by the Federal Inland Revenue Service is wrong. According to NIESV, Nigerians and operators in the sector would rather request from the government interventions by way of palliatives and financial stimulus package to cushion the effect of COVID-19 pandemic, as well as stage for a gradual and sustainable recovery of the economy. Stamp duty payment is enabled by the Stamp Duties Act, SDA 1939, as amended by numerous acts and various resolutions contained in the laws of the Federation of Nigeria. I have the managing consultant, professional services of Pedabo, Mr. Albert Folorunso. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Yes, at least after all the virtual,
we
can have you live on the show now. It's really a very good one.
Well, still keeping our distance.
Yes, so yeah, the social distance is very, very important.
Yeah.
And now let's start with this. Enlighten us more really on the stamp duty thing. We've talked about it from the FRS and we've talked about it from the lecturer of Faculty of Law lecturer giving us the law aspect of this. Now you're a professional in this sector. Yeah. Take us through what this stands for.
All right, thank you very much, viewers. Stamp duty, like you mentioned, is not really a new tax. Okay, maybe I would rather call it an instrument duty so that the nine-post angle can be removed from this discussion. Okay, it's really a duty that you pay on instrument, okay, where there is an agreement or a receipt, any form of instrument, you pay stamp duty. And the essence of paying stamp duty is to let such instrument be admissible in evidence in a court of law, apart from the fact that it is also a revenue generation duty, which is a part of the revenue generation strategy of the government. So I will not say that it's new. One, if you are a lawyer, you have been dealing in property, you know that you pay stamp duty to Lagos State government. If you are into stockbroking, definitely you have been paying stamp duty. If you are into insurance and stamp duty is being paid all over the place. So it is really not new. It is just that the FRS has taken it upon themselves, and the fact that the Finance Act of 2019 brought into force the fact that stamp duty are now to be charged on instruments that are not physical. That is, all those 15 naira transfers charge that is being levied now is stamp duty. So I think that is what brought it to the fore. And the fact that it also clarified the fact that as far as on behalf of the federal government is concerned, the FRS, Federal Inland Revenue Service, is responsible, while that of transaction with between individuals, the State Internal Revenue Service are responsible. So it's not really a new law. The only thing that is new here is the fact that the FRS has taken it seriously, and the fact that there are some of those instruments that before now nobody has pursued stamp duty on them, even though they are clearly stated in the law. For example, you mentioned the issue of rent. Okay, it's always been in the law, but it's just that the communication has not been direct, and that is why the public is agitated. Okay, if the rent period, if the lease period is less than 1 year, it is 0.39%. If it is 1 year to 7 years, it is 0.78%. If it is from 7 to 21 years, it is 3%. And of course, when it is above 21 years, 6%. So we must get it into perspective. We must understand it. You must, the public must know what the correct percentage is, so that you don't go and pay what is not due. I mean, that is the thing we need to put into perspective. And again, we need to understand that stamp duty is an old law, like you said. The last amendment that I know is 1939. All those subsequent, of course, apart from the 2019 Finance Act.
Yes.
It has always been there, no amendment. And so we must understand that it's an old law. It has been there before VAT came into existence. In countries over the world, when you charge VAT on an instrument, you don't charge stamp duty. And that is why it has always been before now. And that is why it concentrated on marketable securities, stocks and shares, conveyance of property, and all that. In South Africa, they have removed stamp duty since 2009. But of course, the stamp duty, the duty on transfer of property is still there. So we can also look at this law. It's overdue for total overhaul and holistic review. We need to ascertain which instruments are supposed to be dutiable as of today, bearing in mind the fact that there is a 7.5% VAT that has to be paid on some transactions, which were in the old, or I will call it old, it's still the current one, which are still on the list, on the schedule to the Stamp Duties Act. Those are things that I believe the federal government, the National Assembly should be looking at, so that let the public understand what it is, let the public know the applicable transactions and the instruments that are really dutiable. The essence, the original reason for stamping a document is to give it a legal backing so that it can be given in evidence in the court of law. And of course, revenue generation, we must not forget that.
That revenue generation part is very important at this time where government tries to look at the non-oil sector. But what about people talking about timing? Like that script read, even the LCCI is coming out to say that no, businesses are struggling at this time. Government is now saying they want to enforce this.
Well, like I said, it is the law. So it is how, if you look at South Africa recently, they just extended the palliative that came up for COVID. So Nigeria too, we are struggling under COVID.
True.
And like I heard somebody said, there's no good or bad time to implement what the law is. And so it's just that government has to have a human face and look at exactly at what point, what instruments, for rent, for individuals. For example, you alluded to the fact that the federal government expects agents and tenants to deduct, to self-charge more or less, and pay stamp duty to the federal government or to the state government, as the case may be. That is also going to be very difficult to track and to trace for individuals. For federal government, I believe that they are only interested in stamp duty that is due on where a company is a tenant or where a company is the landlord. And therefore, it's very easy to trace that to the companies when they carry out their normal audit. Not to say individuals should should charge stamp duty. So they will only charge where it is beneficial to them, where you think that you are going to likely default in your rent, and you know that you want to take the landlord to court. Then you probably take it upon yourself to go and pay stamp duty so that the instrument can be admissible in evidence in a court of law. If you don't have that intention, then you don't really want to pay stamp duty. But of course, we must also understand again that Section 12 of the stamp duties that make it more or less compulsory, even though it was not emphatic. It says you may pay and all that. So a lot of people have also looked at those provisions that it is for my benefit anyway to pay stamp duty. But again, the law is saying it is more or less compulsory that before you execute any instrument, you must pay the stamp duty. Okay? If you fail to pay stamp duty before the first execution, there is penalty depending on whether it is a fixed duty or ad valorem duty. Of course, when they say fixed, it means it is just a particular amount regardless of the value of the transaction covered by the instrument. But it is ad valorem when the stamp duty varies depending on the value of the transaction covered by the instrument. And so some of the items that FIRS is also mentioning today in terms of 1%, 1.5%, particularly for contracts, okay, agreement, simple agreement, agreement under seal, whatever way it is a fixed duty that we have in the schedule to the Stamp Duties Act. So if there is a proposal to increase, we believe that the proposal for review should be holistic. We need to partition the instrument that are on securities, marketable securities, the instrument on properties, the instrument on general vendoring agreements. We should partition them and know which of these ones are already suffering 7.5% VAT
Already.
is difficult to pay VAT at 7.5% and pay additional stamp duty. Okay, we need to partition so that the way it is going now, the public is already aware of stamp duty. The awareness it has gotten in the last 5 months, it has never gotten that since 1939. And so it's a veritable source for Federal Inland Revenue Service, but it has to be harmonized, okay, and it has to be understood, and it has to be forward-looking. I don't agree with the issue of back duty and all that. You appoint a consultant to come and audit me. The consultant does not know which instrument that is dutiable. What is the consultant auditing? Those are the places we need to look at now. So let's educate the public. A lot of lawyers don't understand. I've called a few of my friends that, see, this is stamp duty. Can you guys take it? This is legal issue. They really don't understand. So the public must understand what stamp duty is, the instrument to be levied with duty. There are a couple of instruments are even exempted.
From it.
The public don't know. For example, anything that has to do with federal government or state government instrument that has to be paid by federal, state, or local government, there's no stamp duty. And of course, banks are now being forced, CBN just came up in 2016 that, okay, every transfer, you must charge 15 naira. And I'm sure some of the banks have been charging even government. And I'm sure a few of them have started writing. They wrote one of my clients, and I said, see, the law is very clear. Under general exemption, the last provision in the Act, there is no stamp duty on instruments that involves that federal government is responsible, or state government or local government is responsible for the payment. So those are things that I believe we need to clarify them more.
Clarifying is really very important here, because I've seen the issue of harmonizing it now, putting the facts straight, letting Nigerians understand what this stands for. So is it going to be the FIRS or private players like you in that industry? What role do you now play in all of this to make Nigerians get clarity in all of this?
It is everybody's job to do. The responsibility is for government to collect, whether the state government or the federal government. And so they have the responsibility to educate the public what is due. Taxation must be certain. The authority must be certain. If that principle is not complied with, then it's no longer tax. And of course, like I said, I would rather call it an instrument duty so that we know it's different from courier service by night post. This is not night post issue. Yeah. This is a tax issue. And then we must understand that the taxpayers must understand, the paying public must understand. So as consultants, we are lending our support this way, explaining to the public the rates that are applicable, the rates that are not applicable. Before coming here, I spoke with one of the commissioners of stamp duties, and I understand that FRS now have their stamp duty. They have their adhesive stamp that they used to purchase from night post. Okay. They now have, and you can go ahead and pick up your stamp duty if you really require adhesive stamps, so that you can use it to denote the fact that this instrument stamp duty has been paid. If you check all your checkbooks, it is stated there, stamp duty paid. So everybody has been paying stamp duty. If you check dividend warrants, stamp duty paid. It's stated clearly. So it's not a new law per se, but it's just to get it very clear and then ensure that the appropriate rate is applied and the fact that the public knows what they are going to pay. Like I mentioned earlier, it is for the benefit of, most times, the person paying. You are borrowing money, you want to pay stamp duty so that if there are issues, you can take the instrument to the court. It can be admitted in court. It's only when you pay stamp duty that it can be admitted, except there are criminal issues where you have some exemption. Without stamp duty, the instrument can be accepted. But for other purposes, if I'm a tenant and I know I have a very difficult landlord, I would rather want my instrument to be stamped, because I know that there's a possibility of stamp duty, of a dispute, which will require going to court. So it is really for the benefit of the payer in most cases, except where it is a gift inter vivos. That is, if you give something during a person's lifetime, you give something in your lifetime, you are the one giving, so you must be ready to pay stamp duty on such transfer. That is the only situation where the person giving is the one that pays the stamp duty. Otherwise, the recipient. If you borrow money, it's the borrower that pays the stamp duty, so that you can be sure that if there are disputes, the instrument can be given in courts.
As we round up, it's always very interesting. Our time is
Yes.
almost running out. Another 2 minutes. Now, let's look at expanding this tax net, because we're talking about revenue now. Does this work one way or the other? Is there any interconnectivity or interconnection with this generation and, you know, getting more revenue from taxation? Expanding that net.
Well, if I'm sitting where the FRS is sitting, or the State Internal Revenue Service is sitting, they have looked at 2020. There's a pandemic. They are not. The returns that will be filed in 2021 is not looking bright. A lot of companies are closing down. They are wondering, where are we going to generate revenue? Nigeria is taking loans here and there, and we need to service this loan. Federal government is going to be under stress to generate revenue, and that is why they are thinking in different boxes now, trying to find out, you know, where else can we touch? Which one is readily available that we can trigger, and we don't have to go to the National Assembly. But of course, the way it is, because this one has been, you know, more or less stale, there are a lot of things that they need to go to National Assembly for this race to be changed. It is not something they can change unilaterally. Okay, so the taxpayers are going to hold on to the provision of the law. So it is a revenue-generating venture, purely as far as FRS and State Internal Revenue Service are concerned. It's not that they are so concerned about you going to court. It's about the revenue. And that is why, you know, instruments that are not, instruments that are not physical instruments are not the only one being stamped. That is why the issue of the 50/50 naira charge is there. Okay, it is revenue generation. And so they're thinking that by 2021, there can be issue in terms of revenue in this country if you don't look at other sources where revenue can be generated. So you must understand they applied from that angle.
So it's like preparing for the rainy day.
Of course. But again, as taxpayer, as a consultant, everything must be done within the law. And that is what we encourage that they should do as much as possible.
We're going to have a part 2 of this discussion. Mr. Albert Folorenshaw, really interesting having you today, managing consultant. Pedabo, it's really great having you break this down for me. I think I really get a better understanding of this today. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us on Business Nigeria.
My pleasure.